Hi, my name is Sonia Stiplosek and I'm the artist behind Sonia Stiplosek Fine Art. And I thought I would make a video for you guys looking at my two favorite mediums, which are soft pastels and oil pastels. Even though they are both called pastels, they are in essence two very different mediums. So I thought what I would do today is I would just give a very short introductory video looking at the similarities and the differences between the two. If you have any comments or questions about what was discussed in the video, please feel free to write me a comment. I will write back to you. And if you have any ideas or suggestions, something you would like to learn or would like to have discussed in a future video, please don't hesitate. Write me a comment, send me a message, and I will look at creating that video for you. So, that being said, guys, let's go ahead and let's get into our video. All right, here we go. Okay, so what I thought I'd do first of all is just look at oil pastels and soft pastels very, very generally. Oil pastels, such as this one here, come only in a bar or a stick format. Some companies like to do a circular format. Some prefer to have them in a square format. Now they can come in a hard, a medium, or a soft hardness. An example would be, for example, the Craypaw. These ones are considered a hard pastel. Gallery oil pastels, these would be considered more or less in between medium to soft, and the very, very softest would be the Sennelier oil pastels, which are almost like applying lipstick. Now, soft pastels, which are also known as chalk pastels or dry pastels, come in a stick form as well. Okay, also could be circular, could be square. They also come in a pencil format, and these are wonderful if you're making details. And finally, they come in this little dish, which is basically compressed pigment, and they are used with an applicator. They are wonderful for making soft painting, soft effects, or doing underlayers. Now, the difference between the actual structure of the pastel is that soft pastels are pure pigment mixed with a binder. And this binder, depending on the formula that each company uses, could be a starch, a clay, or even gum arabic. And oil pastels are made by using pigment mixed with oil and wax. Now, as I said, since oil pastels are made with pigment and oil and wax, when we look at the finished product, it actually has an appearance, a vibrancy that somewhat reminds me of an oil painting. And as with an oil painting, there is one drawback if you are trying to take any photographs of your work to sell as a print or to promote or just to post on social media. And that is, I'm going to turn this to the light. I hope you can notice that the wax and the oils in the color pick up the light that's coming in, and it has a lot of reflections. So this is one big drawback that I have with oil pastels, is that it's extremely difficult to get a good quality photograph of your artwork. A lot of artists have to scan their paintings and then photo edit, or some people just, take a photograph and then have to use Photoshop to try to eliminate the glare and try to get the colors as they are. Now, soft pastels, as I mentioned, they are basically a dry pigment mixed with clay or starch, some sort of a binder. They're matte, which means any which way we turn them, you don't have any glare. So that's really, really good. And it's one thing that I do personally love about the soft pastels is that you can get amazingly good, lifelike photographs without any major effort. So that's a very good thing about the soft pastels. Right? And now looking at surfaces, since we left off with soft pastels, I thought we'd carry on. One of the surfaces that probably the most common in use with the soft pastels is paper. And using a paper, regardless of the tooth of the paper, that is the grip that the paper has of the pastel, paper tends to be very flexible. And when you put a powder on this surface, any flexibility in this paper is going to cause some of that powder to fall off. This is why you generally don't find soft pastel paintings done on canvas. It's because there isn't enough rigidity to hold and keep that pastel very stable. And there are different quality or different standards of paper that are good for soft pastel, and a lot depends on the technique that you want to use. If you're interested in something that's more impressionistic, very soft, less detail focused, a very good paper is the Canson Mitiens, or for example, even watercolor works very, very, very well. And just to give an example, here we are. This is using the stick, using the pencil, and using the applicator for the pan pastels. So they give very, very good coverage. This paper doesn't have as much tooth, but for, like I said, a softer piece, they work wonderfully. If you want to do something more detailed, focusing more on realism or hyperrealism, then what you would need is a sanded paper. My personal favorite is the UArt sanded paper. It comes in different grits. The lower the grit number, the higher or the thicker the grit, and the higher the number, that means the finer the grit is. I tend to use 600 to 800 grit for my paintings. And this one is really good because this particular paper is like sandpaper, and it just grips like you would not believe the soft pastel. And there is so much vibrancy, and you can have so much details with this. Now, a lot of people say, well, if this is like sandpaper, why don't I just use sandpaper? And I will say I am all for using sandpaper if you are on a tight budget and you are learning, you are experimenting, and you just want to see if this is for you. If, on the other hand, you are looking to do this at a higher level, you want to keep your paintings for a longer time, maybe you want to sell them, sandpaper is a big no-no because the glue, to use the grit to the paper, is very acidic. And first of all, through time, that grit will actually fall off of the paper as the glue ages. But also, it's going to yellow or discolor the pastels that you use. So if you're on a tight budget, if you just want to experiment and learn, you're in the beginning stages, sandpaper is wonderful. Anything beyond that, you do need to get a sanded paper. A lot of artists love pastel matte, which is another kind of sanded paper. I'm not a fan of it for my particular style. I find it makes the lines just a little bit too sharp for my liking, for my taste. So I prefer to use the UArt sanded paper. Now, going on from there, oil pastels are very, very different in that they can be used on any kind of surface, and literally any surface, be it paper, glass, wood, metal, including fabric such as canvas, which is a big bonus, especially if you think about framing, because a canvas is very, very, very light. Whereas if you have to put that MDF backing behind your painting, your soft pastel painting, it adds weight. So this is a big bonus. To give you an example, this is a sheet of glass, an old sheet of glass that I have. You can use the pastel quite well on the glass without any problems. Oil pastel on the Canson Mitiens also gives a very, very good coverage. I do like to use it on the UArt sanded paper. Wonderful coverage. And unlike what a lot of people might think, the sanded paper does not eat up your oil pastel. Everything depends on the pressure that you apply. So I have made paintings that are well over a meter long by almost a meter tall, and I have used possibly half of a pastel as a maximum. It all depends on the pressure that you use. UArt, and in this case now, Pan Pastel, are some of my favorite surfaces to use with the oil pastels. Okay, the next point that is really important, and it does apply to soft pastels and oil pastels, and that is the quality of the pastel. Both pastels come in an artist grade and a student grade. And a lot of people have asked me, well, what's the difference? And basically, the difference is the quality of the pigments. Artist grade uses top quality pigments, which gives better vibrancy, and it also has less binder, and there is light fastness. Now, light fastness means how long a painting is going to last before the colors start to fade. Ideally, it would last a lifetime with art quality pastels. Student quality pastels, or student grade pastels, we should say, they have very nice pigments in terms of vibrancy a lot of the times, in terms of the smoothness of the application, but the quality of the pigments is a lot lower. And in this case, because it is lower, oftentimes they are not natural pigments. They are chemically produced pigments. What this means is that there generally isn't very good light fastness. So the paintings don't last as long. Now with soft pastels, I will be honest, I learned using student quality pastels. All right. And other than the fact that they're not quite as vibrant as the artist quality, student quality soft pastels can give a very nice painting. They might not last as long, but if you are learning, if you're on a budget, they will give you a very good painting. Oil pastels are a whole other story, because as with soft pastels, I started out using student grade oil pastels. And I will tell you, there has been more than one pack of student grade pastels that I purchased that after laying down one or two strokes, I saw it was so horrible, I literally threw the entire pack into the garbage bin. That being said, in recent years, there are some companies that have come out with oil pastels that are student grade, but that have very good quality. They're very easy to blend, very vibrant, very creamy. Two examples of oil pastels of this grade that I use are Mungyo Artist Quality Soft Pastels and the Montmartre. Now, again, I will stress they are student quality. They are not light fast. The companies do say they have good light fastness, but they never want to confirm what that good quality is. So for learning, for practicing, if you want to do prints, they're great. They're wonderful. I can't recommend them enough. If you want to move to the next level, artist quality, definitely all of the way. Okay, now the next thing that I wanted to talk about has to do with framing. And as I mentioned, soft pastels, they're a chalk. All right, if we look at this, I'm not going to run my fingers over this because I don't want to ruin the actual painting, but this is chalk. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sheet of, actually this one's more visible, and just run my finger across it. And you can see that I did not apply a lot of pressure, but I managed to smear this pastel. If this were my painting, and this were not under glass, my painting would be ruined, and very, very quickly. So soft pastels have to be framed under glass. That's one key thing. You need to do that in order to protect the actual painting. Now, oil pastels. I'm going to tell you something. They have been branded as a non-drying medium because of the oils and the wax. And when they apply, yes, they apply it like a wet medium. However, oil pastels dry over time. This here is an oil pastel painting that I made many, many, many years ago. It was just made on flimsy construction, excuse me, construction paper, nothing fancy. I was just practicing and learning, done with student grade oil pastels. I kept it in a book, you know, out of the light. But I'm going to use my left hand now because I don't want to dirty this picture. I'm going to run my hand right over this. You can hear how hard I'm pressing. All right? And there is literally nothing coming off. This oil pastel is totally dry. This is really, really, really good if you want to frame and you don't want to frame under glass. You can do a painting on an MDF board, for example, or a wood panel, cradle boards, or you can even do it on a canvas. All right, and what you can do there is just to guarantee and to have it dry more quickly, you spray with a fixative. All right, so this painting here is one that I made about 4.5 years ago, more or less. And it was done oil pastel on canvas. I did it actually as a bit of an experiment. I had never painted on fabric with oil pastels before, and I wanted to see what I thought of it. I actually really enjoyed making it. I love the size, and I love the fact that it is framed without glass. There is no reflection whatsoever when it's on my wall. This piece here, I have in a highly transited area. So what I actually did to give it an extra layer of protection is I gave it, I believe it was 4 coats of fixative or varnish. Just to make sure that if somebody were walking by with a piece of jewelry, you know, they rubbed up against it, or maybe they were carrying something. Again, if you know, by accident they rubbed up and scraped along it, that, you know, it didn't damage the painting. But just to show you, I mean, I'm rubbing my hand on this painting. You can hear the pressure. And literally, other than the dust, which I should have cleaned before I did this video, but I didn't. There is nothing wrong with this painting. It's in good condition. It's perfectly fine. So now the question is, when would you use soft pastels and when would you use oil pastels? And the first difference is, one, do you want to make a really large painting or do you want to make something smaller? And the reason I'm saying this is since soft pastels have to be framed under glass for protection and they need the backing, when you add the weight of the glass, the backing, and the frame, and you're doing a very, very large piece, this becomes very, very heavy. For some houses, depending on the structure of what your wall is made out of, it actually might be too heavy to hang on a wall. I've made paintings that are well over 1 meter in size in terms of length and almost 1 meter in height. And I've done them in oil pastels, and all I've had to worry about was the weight of the frame. I've done them on canvas, or if I've done it on MDF board, which if I were doing a very, very large size, I would not do MDF board because that is also very heavy. So definitely, if you're looking to frame without glass, because a lot of people do not like reflection, oil pastels is also the way to go. However, if you're doing smaller pieces, and by smaller, I don't mean something tiny. It could be like a 16 by 20. It could be 1/2 meter in size. And you want to do something very soft or something impressionistic, something delicate, or even something very detailed. And there's no issue about you know, having it under glass, there's no issue of the weight. You know, either yourself or your client isn't concerned about having any reflections from the glass. Soft pastels is also a very good way to go. So again, it all depends. One medium is not better than the other. It all depends on what you are looking for. I like this one. I want something more in the style of an oil painting, but still, you know, being able to use a pastel. And if we're looking at weight, and if we're looking at, you know, no glass reflections. So guys, I hope I've answered some of your questions. I hope you've learned a few things. If you have any comments or any questions, please feel free to leave them. I will definitely respond. And if you have any ideas for any future topics, please, again, in the comments, please leave a little message and I will get to it. All right. So everybody have a wonderful day. Keep painting. Bye-bye.